Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are getting up and feeling great out there this morning, having a great start to your day, and a fantastic week out there so far. Got you a pretty big update this morning talking about what's going to happen weather-wise for your Wednesday. We'll speak on this Gulf low that will bring the potential for a lot of rain for areas that really need the rain, and then even a severe weather risk, especially later on tonight for portions of Florida. There is a tornado risk, so we need to speak on that. We will talk on the energy that's already moved into the western U.S., into the northern Rockies. This will bring snow, even a little severe weather a little bit later today across areas of the plains. But I think the bigger severe weather day for the plains, for like the north central area of the country, will be tomorrow. But there will be a risk of severe weather and some higher elevation snow for like areas of Wyoming, northern Utah, northern Colorado, and areas out there in the higher elevations of the western U.S. So we'll speak on all this, and then at the very end of the video, we'll give you an update on the tropics as things continue to be pretty active way out there in the tropical Atlantic. But nothing is super concerning. There's nothing really big out there. We do have a new named storm, and we'll speak on that in the second half of the video for you folks who are interested. So with that being said, if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, you know the deal. Please put those in the comments below so I can pray over it and so others can do so too. So let's get rolling here. So it looks like a kind of gears out there with how everything's kind of spinning around. You got this upper trough beginning to dig down with a flow kind of like this around it, and then you still got this pesky low pressure up here in Canada, and the flow around this is going like that. And then you have an active southern jet down here, and you can see this moisture that's really climbed northward, and you got this flow going kind of like this. So you certainly got some gears working together out there, if you will. Not really together, but just different flows out there in the atmosphere. And this is water vapor loop, so it really shows how much moisture is in the atmosphere. And I mean, there's a great bit of moisture considering out there in the lower 48 right now, just with a lot of energy flying around in different areas of the country. But we'll get these arrows back off your screen. Can't talk this morning. But you see the remnants of Lydia, which quickly strengthened into a Category 4 hurricane, but very quickly weakened as it hit those higher elevations of just landmass in Mexico. And now we just have the remnants of Lydia. It always blows my mind how quick these tropical systems in the eastern Pacific, once they hit the west coast of Mexico, how quick they weaken. They weaken so much quicker than if you got a tropical system that hits the Gulf Coast or the southeast, just because of the abrupt change in elevation that tropical systems do not like. So you got that. You got moisture from this that's kind of working in tandem with this Gulf low that's beginning to develop. You see these plumes of white down here. These are showers and storms developing in the central Gulf of Mexico. And really, the precipitation shield has already climbed into the southern sections of the Gulf states, into this region, right into here, I would say. But a lot of moisture will make its way in this general direction, and it will stretch all the way into the Carolinas and Georgia, especially South Carolina, especially Georgia, and all of Florida later on, basically throughout the day. And a severe weather threat will be here for areas of Florida on the southern side of this low pressure. Then, like I said, you do have the energy screeching in from the northwest, and this is going to create the higher elevation snow for the northern plains, and then a severe weather threat eventually, maybe later on, like at the wee hours in the morning tomorrow morning for areas of the middle of the country. Then you still got this low just spinning around. Will bring some showers into the Great Lakes region, just spinning around this low pressure out here. So that's what's going on based off water vapor loop. Let's get this back off your screen. Let's keep rolling. Now, as far as what is actually falling on the surface, on your heads out there, on your cars, whatever you may be doing, a lot of this Gulf low looks massive. It looks like it's covering the entire deep south, but some of this rain is not hitting the ground. I always want to mention that, but I can tell you already the rain is making it a little bit further north than what we thought it was going to, at least what we showed in last night's video. It's raining pretty good from what I'm seeing on radar in like places like Alexandria, where we were thinking maybe not a whole lot of rain would fall with this. So maybe this is good news for areas a little bit further to the east, like in the Mississippi, where rain's already beginning to fall in southwest Mississippi. We really need the rain. Hopefully you guys get a good soaking, but this entire Gulf low is being enhanced also from just a moisture pool from the remnants of Lydia that's over Mexico right now. And then eventually this rain will really overtake Georgia, Florida, and South Carolina. A little bit of shower activity over the northeast, and we got some storms rumbling through northern Missouri, southern Iowa, and then we got a lot of energy out west, especially the northwest, the Pacific Northwest, where we have a third area of energy that has basically worked its way into the coastal northwestern sections of the U.S. Then we have that second storm that will really develop and get going a little bit later today, where a surface low will actually develop in northeast Colorado and really bring some dynamic weather for areas of the middle of the country. Speaking of the Storm Prediction Center, we will zoom in on Florida here in a second, when we do have like a scrawny looking marginal risk that stretches from areas of Nebraska all the way to Peoria. And I would say this is for later on tonight, but you do have that marginal risk of severe storms. And this is a level 1 out of 5, and we will talk on this a little bit later in the video when we get to this time frame or this time stamp in this video. Geographical region is what I'm trying to say. Florida, you got the level 2 out of 5 risk in the yellow. That's a slight risk, and this is really driven off a tornado threat down here. So pretty much all the coastal regions of the Big Bend, all the way to the central coastal regions of the Panhandle of Florida, all the way down to just south of Tampa Bay. So we got a lot going on in Florida, especially later on tonight. So it's certainly something that we need to watch out for and really discuss in detail. But the tornado threat, 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. And then the wind threat, you have a 15% risk of winds exceeding 50 knots or higher. That's 55 to 60 miles per hour within 25 miles in a given location. The hail threat, there is that 5% risk. If anything upgrades a day, it'll be that, I would say that the hail threat would increase, but I really don't think this will get going in this region until later on tonight. We'll certainly watch. Excessive rainfall outlook, there's no big threat for flooding. I think that this rain across the deep south will fall at a slow enough pace to where, even though it's very dry and the soil will have a little bit of a hard time absorbing all this rain that's just suddenly falling across the deep south, I don't think you're just going to get torrential downpours for hours on end. It's going to rain pretty heavy at some times, but I think that's why you don't have a big risk of flash flooding down here. So there's really not much to mention on this screen. But you're starting to see a lot of alerts out there from the system flying through the higher elevations of the western U.S., the Rockies, and all the mountain ranges out here. You got high wind watches and these kind of dark, almost like mustard colors right here across Nebraska, northwest Kansas, northeast areas of Colorado, and then southern and southeast areas of, southwest sections of South Dakota. We might get a blizzard warning in the Black Hills with a lot of wind. Typically when these surface lows are developing, you get a lot of strong winds associated with them. But you see in the pink colors, not this pink, this is red flag warnings. But this pink color right here, those are winter storm warnings. The Bighorn Mountains in Wyoming are going to pick up a lot of snow from this. I'm talking about maybe over a foot of snow. And then some of these other isolated higher elevations in Wyoming, like Yellowstone National Park, down here also in southeast areas of Wyoming. Winter weather advisories in this shade of purple right here. And then winter storm watches still up for this like teal color and blue right here. Let's talk about the southeast first. Let's break it down. Here comes all this rain moving in. I want to talk about kind of what's falling right now across Louisiana. As you can tell, the heavier rain. Yeah, let me know what's falling out here, guys, in Louisiana. But it looks like you have some heavier rain. Maybe some of this is struggling to hit the ground because of the lingering dry air in place. But you got heavier rainfall in the Alexandria region. Maybe not heavy, but moderate rainfall based off radar. Some of this is trying to creep up to the Monroe area. You got some rain beginning to get closer to Jackson. And yeah, this is good news. Hopefully this rain can make it a little bit further north. Maybe Jackson, Vicksburg gets a little bit more rain than maybe originally forecast. We'll have to see what happens with this. But talking about what could happen as far as the HRRR model, this Gulf low will continue. Come on, let's get in motion here. There we go. This Gulf low will continue to move in. We're getting into about 1 p.m. Rain beginning to take over the southern half of Alabama, most of the southern half of Mississippi. Heavy rain falling in southeast and southern areas of Louisiana. Rain beginning to take over the panhandle of Florida. And then we get into like around dinner time tonight. Rain has moved into South Carolina, taking over most of Georgia, raining for basically 2/3 of Alabama. Might not make it up to like Florence or Huntsville, Alabama, but certainly Birmingham, down to Montgomery, down to Mobile, Dothan, you guys will certainly see a good bit of rain from this. Still raining back here in southern Mississippi this evening, but look at the heavier rain waiting to move on shore with some storms also. But we'll continue to make our way into about, this is around midnight tonight. It's raining pretty steadily. Going to be a rainy night in South Carolina and Georgia. The further you get south in South Carolina, I think the more rain. Same thing with Georgia. A lot of heavy rain. Now, if you're going to get torrential downpours, if you work your way down to northern Florida, that's where you will see it. As the deeper you get into the night, the heavier this rain will get, and then eventually you could get just some flat out strong to severe storms. And here it comes, with the surface low right into here. This will be a developing line of storms into the wee hours of the morning. It's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And we'll have to watch for these storms right here. It could be an early morning tornado threat across north central and northern Florida. Maybe all the way down to Tampa Bay. We'll have to watch for this. We'll get detailed on that here in a second. But as far as rainfall and what's going to fall between now and just the next 24 hours, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, maybe an inch of rain. The further you get out into the southeast areas of kind of the swamp regions of Louisiana, the more rain you see. Gulfport, you get 1.5 inches of rain today, but it's leaving you high and dry up here in Alexandria, but that doesn't make sense because it's raining. So, it's hard to believe this obviously in Louisiana because of that. I think you'll get more rain a little bit further north than what this is showing in Mississippi. You guys will have to let me know what you're seeing. I would love if you got rain gauges, let me know, a weather station, let me know. But southern Alabama's, good for 1 inch, 2 inches of rain. I think that more rain could fall in Birmingham today. I think that they should move this a little bit further north, and they will maybe in the next couple updates. A lot of times these low pressures in the Gulf do what we call a northwest trend, and a lot of times this isn't good for us folks in the Northeast because it pushes the warm nose further inland, which brings more warm air to the surface and more warm air aloft. But in this case, we would like it because we need more widespread rains for everybody. But anyways, we continue to make our way into Georgia. Okay, a lot of rain could fall into Georgia between now and just in the next 24 hours, and it's still raining in some of these areas even after tomorrow morning. But rainfall, widespread 1 to 3 inches of rain in central and especially southern Georgia. Atlanta, I think you'll get a little bit more rain than what this is showing. I think Columbia into the low country of South Carolina, I think more rain will fall than what this is showing. But you keep this going, and it doesn't increase that much more, but in fact, let's look at what the National Weather Service is showing. Same thing. They kind of work together. But if you do look at the HRRR model and kind of what I just showed you, right? And this does bring a little bit more heavy rain a little bit further north, but still not a lot. There's a stout cutoff into here for sure. Now let's look at Florida. How much rain could fall down here? Let's go back to let's go to National Weather Service. And, I think the northern half of Florida, the panhandle of Florida, is good for 1 to 3 inches of rain, just really anywhere. They've really dropped off the rainfall totals, so that's something to take note of. I would say that's good news because you don't want 3 inches of rain when you haven't had a whole lot of rain, or you'll have a lot of runoff just because the soil can't absorb it. But I'll be watching to see how this verifies today. I would be disappointed if we only got 1/4 inch of rain here in Columbia, like the National Weather Service is going for. So hoping that this gets a little bit further north for our folks, especially just further north that really need the rain. But as far as the severe weather threat in Florida, you have this slight risk. This includes areas, and guys, I'm just going to do this on the fly, not even ashamed of it. You know how I like to wing things sometimes. I meant to have my Google Maps pulled up. Was just going to wing it, but not going to wing it. But, I would say Sarasota to Tampa Bay, Lakeland, Spring Hill, not quite up to Gainesville, but you guys will have a tornado threat. But the Chiefland area, down up to Perry, the town that got devastated by Hurricane Idalia, and all the way over here to Crawfordville, maybe in Tallahassee, you need to watch out. But I would say these areas run the biggest risk for a tornado threat. Level 2 out of 5 risk. Tornado risk is a 5% risk. You have a 5% risk in this brown area. A tornado within 25 miles in any given location. Hail threat won't be a big threat down here today. You don't really have the ingredients for that, but you will have a risk for damaging winds. You got a 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And I'll talk about winds here in a second. It's going to be some gusty winds associated with this pretty strong low pressure. But as far as what the radar could look like, we'll start off this afternoon. Not a whole lot going on. You already got some storms developing around Miami, points north, down here in the southern tip of Florida. But I really don't think there'll be a huge tornado threat with these. It's what comes in later tonight. This is getting into about 10 to 11 p.m. These are some big storms working their way into the Tampa Bay area. When I say Tampa Bay area, I'm meaning like pretty much like 50 miles north of Tampa Bay, 50 miles south of Tampa Bay. A lot of storm activity really moves in later this evening. So if you're laying the kids down to bed, you kind of, mellowing out for the night, go to sleep, make sure you have a way to get alerts because it could get dicey overnight tonight. Here comes the first round. This could weaken, but look at these little hooks and these little kidney bean looks right in here. I'm telling you, watch out. All right, I'm not saying we're going to have a Florida tornado outbreak. I don't think we'll get that serious, but there's definitely a legit tornado risk. But then we start to get into around 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. We got to watch these cells too, moving onshore, like well north of Tampa Bay into the Crystal River area. Trying to mention some towns, but basically up, Highway 98, 19. I would watch in this region right into here for some tornadic storms. Now, these aren't going to be huge wedge, EF4, EF5 tornadoes. Tropical kind of tornado threats are very, they're normally very brief. But I'm going to tell you, even into Thursday, there will be a tornado threat too. It's increased with this line of storms that whips across areas of Florida. We'll talk about that here in the coming video. But tomorrow there's a legit risk also. If you look at the significant tornado parameter, not that high through the afternoon. But here comes that first batch. It's elevated. You got a 3, 4, even a 5 on the significant tornado parameter. This indicates ingredients. The higher the number, the higher the ingredients for tornadoes in this region. That doesn't mean that you're going to get there's a 7 out of 10 chance to see a tornado in this area or something. It just means the higher the number, the higher, the better the ingredients. But you look as we're getting into about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, right as you're getting into the southern Big Bend region, right as it enters like the west coast of Florida. The significant tornado parameter based off the HRRR model really is elevated into this region tomorrow morning. So please be careful. Legit tornado risk in areas of Florida later on tonight. Okay, but let's talk about the winds. We'll start off this afternoon. Gusty winds begin to take over the coastal regions of Alabama, Mississippi, the panhandle of Florida, basically from southwest to northeast. And we'll take it all the way through Thursday morning. Between now and Thursday morning, guys, we could get here in southern Alabama, the western areas of the panhandle of Florida, and just areas of southern Georgia, anywhere from a 30 to a 50 mile per hour wind gust is possible. Some gusty winds, very possible. And you keep this going, and it gets really gusty. Some strong winds for Florida later on tomorrow morning as this surface low actually makes a technical landfall. So active times to the southeast coming up over the next 2 days. Now, the northeast are still dealing with energy from this low up here in Canada. So same general pattern. You'll have some showers that fly off Lake Erie, maybe even Lake Ontario. Most of the action's in southern Ontario. But you're going to have a shower, maybe even a heavy downpour or two here in areas of the interior northeast and New England. These will fly through, might drop a little bit of very small hail just with a lot of cold air aloft. These will drift through western and northern areas of New York State, Vermont, New Hampshire, even up through Maine throughout the afternoon, evening hours. And, we'll probably do it again tomorrow morning. But other than that, guys, there's not a whole lot to mention up in the northeast. It's pretty quiet. Just kind of a drizzly, light rain, kind of fall-like day, especially for the interior northeast. Now, the south central U.S., pretty quiet too. Most of this rain heads out. The coastal regions of Texas will still deal with some lingering rains just along the immediate coastal region of Texas. The rain will clear out for Louisiana completely by the time we get into this evening, and then we're left with a pretty quiet night. Maybe some showers work their way onshore around the Corpus Christi area in the wee hours of the morning into tomorrow morning. But other than that, south central U.S., pretty quiet today. North central U.S., a little bit of a different story. I think today will be kind of day one of a pretty active period. But you'll have some showers drifting through the northern Mississippi Valley region, eastern areas of Iowa, western areas of Illinois. These will make it all the way to northern Illinois. You might have some showers around dinner time in Chicago that make their way through. Not a big deal at all. And then they get more elevated, though, as we make our way deeper into the night. And then about dropped my mouse there. And then we see the surface low right here developing. See this low pressure? And this is when we begin to see that mid-level jet really begin to max out. We talked about that a lot in last night's video, but this is when we start to see an elevated region of wind profiles that's going to support lift for storms and just wind energy for storms. So here it comes. It's developing right into here. We get some big-time storms that start to develop in southeast areas of South Dakota, northeast, kind of around the Sioux Falls, Sioux City region. Some storms begin to develop. These are going to be very elevated, but they could produce some hail, some gusty winds. Tornado threat with these will be very, very, very low. But here comes the surface low. Now tomorrow, different story. Okay, I wouldn't be surprised if we get an enhanced risk for tomorrow. Big storms erupt. Now I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but this is getting into tomorrow evening. You got your classic look of storms associated with a low pressure. We'll see how the ingredients are looking, but we could have severe storms, maybe even producing tornadoes in one part of Nebraska and rain switching to snow in the other part of Nebraska. It could be a very dynamic day for the state of Nebraska tomorrow. We talk about the northern plains, energy beginning to work in this morning. Really will take over the state of Wyoming, Montana, and northern Colorado. Snow will begin to fall at a pretty heavy clip in the Bighorn Mountains of Wyoming, and just all these other mountain ranges down here in southern Wyoming also. But I really think this will be a jackpot region right here, kind of in the Bighorn Mountain Range. I believe that's what it's called in northern Wyoming. Some very high mountaintops in this region. It's always neat to really, if you get time, just study. I mean, not everybody's interested in it, so nobody's going to make time for it. I know I am. Just to study the different geographical regions out west, especially out west, these different higher elevation areas. I mean, there's a lot of areas that people don't even realize that have mountains. Like, people don't realize there's some mountainous regions in like the Great Lakes regions. People don't realize there's mountains that go all the way to the coastal regions of Maine. People probably don't even realize there's mountains in Arkansas, and so in eastern Oklahoma. It's pretty wild. There's a lot of features out there that I didn't realize until I was like in my teens. But anyways, getting off track here. But this surface low begins to develop somewhere in northeast Colorado, most likely. But not only are you going to have heavy areas of precipitation, but heavy areas of rain, heavy areas of snow. And then as we're getting in later tonight, we'll watch for those storms right here in eastern South Dakota. But later on tonight, the snow levels begin to drop, and waking up tomorrow morning to just heavy snow falling in southern Wyoming, northwest Wyoming, areas of Montana, these higher elevations of Montana right here in west central sections of the state, the Bighorn Mountains right here in northern Wyoming. Heavy snow begins to fall. This is a lot of heavy precipitation beginning to take over the southern areas of Montana, and a lot of heavy precipitation falling. A very chilly, heavy rain in areas of eastern Wyoming. But the Black Hills right there, you can tell rain beginning to switch to heavy wet snow. And I think the heavy snow for like the Black Hills region will really crank up tomorrow morning. But yeah, so snowfall between now and just the next 24 hours. You see the snow piling up here in these higher terrain regions of Colorado, even into southern sections of Wyoming. But the snow is beginning to pile up here in the higher elevations right here in Wyoming, Yellowstone National Park, and even the mountains of northwest Utah. I always get my northwest and northeast, southeast, southwest mixed up here. But heavy snow is getting to the changing of the seasons. This isn't unusual really at all. We're getting deeper in October. Third system moving onshore. We're seeing a lot of heavy rains in the western sections of Washington and Oregon, even extreme northwest areas of Colorado. Higher elevation snow falling too. The steady stream of rain will continue to make its way through. This will make it all the way into the western areas of those two states also. But really, a lot more rain is going to fall for the western sections of Washington and Oregon throughout the next 24 hours. And in fact, you look at it, another, as much as, depending on where you are, sometimes in these valleys, the mountains on one side or the other actually helps to create almost a rain shadow for certain areas, and the lift actually enhances rainfall for these higher elevations. But this is how much rain could fall in these sections. You know, Portland down to, what is it, Eugene, a lot of heavy rain could fall. I think the further you get up into Washington State, not as much rain, but you can get another 1/4 inch of rain, 1/2 inch of rain in Seattle today. As far as snowfall, these higher elevations right in here, you got to get pretty high up, but snowpack just continues to pile up between now and the next 24 to 30 hours. So temperatures warming up all the way up to Missouri. I mean, getting all the way up into the 80s, guys. Look at this, getting all the way up to the 70s. And western areas of Nebraska, these will be the same areas that will get a little bit of snowfall. If the snow will fall at minimum, how much will accumulate? But people always say, and I always got to do an off-topic story. People always say in the Carolinas, if you don't like the weather, wait a day. I would argue out in the plains, the Midwest, especially the northern plains and the high plains, it is much more dynamic, I'm telling you guys. Now, we do get what you call a wedge here in the Carolinas, where it'll go from the 70s one day to the 40s and 50s the next. I mean, I've seen it go from the low 70s in January before here in the early 2000s to an ice storm the next day. So that is very dynamic. But sometimes out in the middle of the country, we get what you call blue northerns. And, I mean, it'll literally go from the 80s to a raging snowstorm in the 20s the next day. Denver saw it in early September of 2020, where you had record high temperatures of over 100 degrees, and then like the next day it's in the 30s and snowing. So it's very, very, very dynamic out there. But anyways, off that, but I like to nerd out with you folks. But very warm temperatures in the south central U.S., the high plains, and warming on up here in the southeast, upper 70s, low 80s. But we'll see how warm these temperatures verify in like South Carolina before this cloud cover and rain really moves in. But it's cooling off here in the northwest because of these systems that continue to move in. But I mean, look at the high plains. I'm getting into the 80s in the eastern sections of Colorado. I mean, even into the 60s into Montana, and to in eastern areas. Maybe might hit 70 degrees in eastern Wyoming today ahead of a system that will really dramatically cool you guys off. Let's give you an update on the tropics. I mean, it still looks active out there. You got a new area of interest, has a 20% chance to develop within the next 7 days. I don't see this as a concern. And now we have newly developed Sean, which has developed from an invest to a tropical storm. So Sean is not expected to really bother anybody. It's expected to maintain tropical storm status and eventually maybe weaken into a depression sometime early next week. But you see how the cone kind of goes from looking like it's going to go out to sea to kind of shifting back south a little bit. That is something we need to watch. There is some model guidance that really takes whatever's left over Sean into the Caribbean, but it doesn't really have it developing. But we'll watch. But as far as the look in the entire North Atlantic, even showing the U.S. and the Caribbean, this is that next tropical wave coming off the west coast of Africa. And then this is Sean. I mean, you would argue the wave looks better than the actual storm, but Sean does have a low-level circulation, and we will continue to see what Sean does as far as development over the next few days. But it's quiet in the Caribbean. The Caribbean has been very quiet this year. It really has. We weren't expecting a high level of activity. In fact, some people did predict below levels of activity as far as the tropics in the Caribbean. But the Gulf of Mexico, was predicted to be above average, and we haven't seen a whole lot there either, which is good. But anyways, we'll watch these two features. The GFS really only latches on to Sean, but doesn't do much in the medium term for Tropical Storm Sean at all. Doesn't really do anything with this tropical wave, hence why it's probably got a 20% risk of development. But it does take the leftover moisture kind of into the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward Islands, midway next week. Does it do anything after that? Who knows? Because that's like 8 to 10 days out. We don't know what's going to happen that far out. So that's all I got, guys. Hopefully that helps. I will probably not have a video tonight unless something dramatically increases severe weather-wise for Florida. But, it's just a slower time, guys. I've really had an opportunity to just really take a deep breath from how busy it was in September. And I got a feeling, guys, and, I don't like to, I know that I started off doing weather in the Southeast, so I always will be a little bit biased towards the Southeast. But I have a feeling we're in for some active times in the winter, especially once we get into January. I always am hoping for that winter storm in December. That's always a dream since I was a kid, to get a winter storm in December, snow falling here in the South with the Christmas lights. But I got a feeling we're in for some very busy times ahead. So using this slow time in October to just really just slow it down, and just really focus on the things right in front of me. And even though the videos really haven't been popping off, I've just became content with it. But just taking those breaks in the evenings, making 1 or 2 videos a week in the evenings, maybe 3. But I know you guys understand. Love you guys. God bless all y'all, and have a great Wednesday.